nailing your niche and nailing your avatar is one of the best things you can do for your business. It's one of those things you just do once, but it benefits you for the rest of your life. It makes everything easier going forward, getting clients, getting leads, closing deals, hiring team members, delivery. It just makes everything easier, right? It's a very, very powerful thing. And I realized recently that in our founder course, the most viewed lesson was the lesson on nailing your niche and avatar. So I realized this is a big problem for a lot of people. It's a big problem for me in the past. So I wanted to make this video to share some more tips on it because it's so, so important. Now, the reason I had a problem with this in the past, and the reason I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with picking a niche, because, we've all heard it before. We've all heard that the riches are in the niches, right? But should you niche down, and how do you do it? How do you know who to pick, right? We've all heard this common knowledge before, but we struggle to actually make the decision. And the problem is that, if you're watching this, you probably sell something that a lot of different types of people could benefit from. Maybe you're selling an offer that tons of different businesses could benefit from. But that doesn't mean that you should be going to sell everything to everybody, because you'll probably just end up selling nothing to nobody, right? Or you will have some traction, but it'll just be really, really hard to scale. And it's really counterintuitive because, I used to think that if I work with more industries or open myself up to more niches, I'll have more opportunity because there's more businesses. But it's actually the opposite. You actually have less opportunity because, yes, you might be going to play in a bigger pond, but there's more fish in that pond, right? There's other sharks in the water. There's more competition, more people selling what you sell, and there's nothing that, sets you apart from it, right? So it's actually better to try to become number one in a smaller space and pick a corner of the market, because there'll just be less people you're competing with, and you'll now stand out as the obvious choice because you'll be a specialist, right? It's why a specialist doctor will get paid more than your local physician, right? We always value specialists more because there's less of them, right? And we value what's rare. So very, very important. But let me tell you a quick story about my friend Quinn. My friend Corey was the CMO for a marketing company called Scorpio, and he came in and took them from $20 million a year to $150 million a year in revenue. That's crazy, right? When do you ever hear about a service business, like an agency, growing to 9 figures, right? Normally we think it's got to be a tech company or an app or a platform or an innovative product, but this was just a plain old service business. So, I chatted with Corey to ask him how he did it, and it really came down to the power of niche. You see, when Corey came in, he came in and took over as CMO when they were kind of stuck at $20 million. And he didn't come in and start adding more stuff so they could grow. He didn't say, hey, to grow to 100 million, we're going to have more services, more industries. He actually got rid of a lot of the services and a lot of the industries they were working with, right? So he actually came in and did the opposite of what you'd expect and really made the business more focused and consolidated it, right? And really, really applied the principle of less is more. Because we think that, more is better, but a lot of times we just need to do less, but we need to do it better. So what Corey did is he interviewed everyone on the team, all the department heads, and said hey, who are the clients we love working with? What are the projects we complete the easiest? What are the clients that give us the most referrals? And then he looked at the numbers, right? What are the industries that have the highest closing rate? What are the industries or the products that are the most profitable? And from all this, research and data, he found out that law firms were the favorite clients to work with for this agency. So he made the hard decision of actually cutting out all the other revenue streams and having the company just fully focus on law firms. And then they just exploded. And they even added other niches over time, but only after they kind of got to the top of the law firm niche. And they even made their other niches under separate brands so they could still have all the branding, messaging, and offers focused to speaking to one avatar. So just want to share that to show you how powerful it is. And, picking your niche is an example of making sure that you're playing the right game to begin with. Because I find a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, we make the mistake of just focusing on the game, improving our game, and making small tweaks to our marketing, our sales, the day-to-day of what we're doing, without stopping to think and step back and be am I even playing the right game to begin with, right? And that's really an example of having the right niche, dialing in your niche and avatar, and dialing in your offer. Those are things that really help you win the battle before it started, right? I like to think that, your niche is a hidden force that either works for you or works against you, right? And whether you know it or not, it's making your life harder or it's making it easier to grow, right? So yeah, we want to make sure we're playing the right game, not just think about how to actually play our game better, because sometimes you just need to pivot and change your strategy altogether. Now, think about this. Let's say you were offered to play a game of basketball for $1,000, and if you won, you would get $1,000. If you lost, you'd have to pay $1,000. And you could either play against Michael Jordan or you could play against your 5-year-old cousin. Obviously, you choose to play against your 5-year-old cousin and win $1,000, right? But that's an example, right? And this is the same thing that we do in our business without knowing it, right? You have to really choose and make sure you're playing the right game to begin with, because statistically speaking, every single industry out there that you could be working with is not created equal. There's just a natural order of things. Some are going to be more profitable than others. Some will be easier to sell than others. Some will be harder to sell. like it would be impossible that every industry or niche out there to work with would give you the same amount of value and the same amount of fulfillment and the same amount of profitability, right? Like they all are just basically different in some capacity. So biggest thing I want you to take away is that your niche has to be a conscious choice. Make a conscious strategic decision about this, right? Don't just work with whoever comes in the door. That's okay in the beginning, but to really, really grow and scale, you want to really pick your niche. And everything becomes easier when you do, because it becomes much easier to write copy, much easier to build offers, much easier to deliver when you only have to focus on solving a problem for one type of person. Because the more types of people that you have to focus on solving a problem for, the more it takes to like learn how they work, learn their language, learn how to deliver for them, how to keep them happy, how to attract and close them, all of that, right? So everything just becomes easier when you can just focus more on one specific area and become the best at that and dominate that. So now, how do you actually do this? What are some tips on how to actually, go about picking your niche, right? Well, first, let me define the term. So there's niche and there's avatar. Your niche is kind of the broad stroke on what you're doing, and that could be either your service or the people you're working with, or ideally both, right? So you could say, I'm the best at local SEO, right? That's a niche, right? Or you could say, I'm the best at working with restaurants that want to become franchises and want to grow their business. Or you can combine both. You could say, I'm going to specialize in SEO for restaurants, like just as an example, right? So the niche is the broad stroke of what you're doing. It's kind of the who, and the avatar is the specific person you're reaching out to, right? Now, if you're selling B2B, your avatar would be like the specific types of company and the decision maker at those companies, right? So you want to get clear on these things. These things you want to make a very clear decision on and focus your efforts 100% on that. Now, you don't have to be married to it, right? It doesn't have to be a crazy big decision. If you're still in the early stages, you can consider like a 3 to 6 month experiment. So don't worry about like making the perfect decision, because you can always change it later if you find out it's not working out. But what I would recommend you do is you do an analysis of your past clients and past projects, right? And if you're just starting out and you haven't started a business yet, you don't have past clients, you can still do this analysis going forward and kind of just do some research and thinking to fill the gaps. But anyway, do some analysis, and here are the criteria points that I'd say you want to look for, right? It's who's been the most profitable to work with, who's given me the most money, or who I've taken the most money home from, right? After all expenses. Who's been the easiest to sell? Like, maybe there's some clients where it's just easier to sell and there's less objections. There's just less resistance, and there's some that give you a lot more resistance and it takes a lot more convincing, right? So who's the easiest to sell? Who's the easiest to deliver, right? What kind of clients have the least headaches, the least like back and forth? They're just easier to work with. They value my work. They have less complaints. Like, think about that as well. Then think about, is this market growing or is it shrinking? Think about like the next 5-10 years. Is this something that's going to be around and it's growing and it's in demand, or is it, on the decline, right? So think about the external market conditions that could be, working in your favor or against your favor. Now, another one would be, how much of a pain point do these people have? Because if what you're selling only makes a slight difference in their life, in improving their life, it's going to be much harder to sell. You want to look for a niche where there's like a really, really big problem that aligns with what you do best. That is the magical formula right there, right? So they have to have a big pain point, like something that you can really solve, because otherwise they're not going to be able to pay that much, right? And that's the last point. Look at their purchasing power. Can this niche afford what I want to charge, right? Because a lot of times I talk to an entrepreneur or an agency owner, and they're like, hey, I'm working with these clients, but they can only pay, X dollars a month. They can only pay a couple $100 a month. How do I get them to pay more? And the answer is you don't. You don't convince them to pay more if they don't have the money. You go find people that do have the money, right? Like, so it's just an example of, choosing the right game to play to begin with rather than trying to optimize your game. So those are the biggest factors you could look at. What I would do if I were you is, if you really want to nail this, if you really want to nail your niche and avatar and leverage the power of focus in your business, then, just do an analysis on pen and paper. Just list out all the different, projects or niches you've worked with, and just, rate it on those like 6 factors that I just covered in this video. And if you're just getting a business started, you can still kind of narrow down the industries that you think are going to be the best to work with, rate it based on those factors, do a little bit of research, maybe talk to some people in that niche, do some like prospect interviews and fill in the gaps there. But I highly, highly encourage you to master the power of niche, to really dial this in. Don't worry, if there's multiple industries that you'd love to work with, you can always just master one, build that up, make that be able to stand on its own, and then get to the other industry later, right? But what you don't want to do is just try to be building all these different businesses all at once, because you'll drive yourself crazy. So leverage the power of niche, put in the effort, take the time to do this analysis and make a conscious decision on who you want to serve, what you want to sell them. It might take a little bit of experimenting along the way, but once you get this right, I promise everything becomes easier. All right, I hope that was helpful.